The crimson wastes stretched endlessly beneath twin suns, a desolate expanse where even the bravest explorers feared to tread. At its heart stood the chains of eternity, massive crystalline pillars that pierced the blood-red sky, humming with ancient power. Bound between them was Valdrath, the last dragon, whose scales shimmered like dying stars. For 1,000 years, no being had dared approach within 100 meters of those chains, until Grace arrived. She stood at the edge of the forbidden zone, her survey equipment beeping warnings that she promptly silenced. The human exploration vessel Wanderer's Hope had detected unusual energy signatures here, and Grace, as the ship's xenoarchaeologist, had volunteered to investigate. Her partner Ezra had argued against it during the entire descent. "Grace, every species in this sector has legends about this place." Ezra's voice crackled through her helmet comm. He was monitoring from orbit, safe and sensible. The Krell won't even speak its name. The Vex Collective threatens exile to anyone who approaches. There's wisdom in fear. There's also stagnation in it, Grace replied, stepping forward. The ground beneath her boots was scorched glass, melted and reformed countless times. Besides, when has humanity ever listened to "don't go there" signs? She could almost hear Ezra's resigned sigh. They'd been partners for 3 years, long enough for him to know that Grace's curiosity was as unstoppable as a supernova. "At least let me keep the transport ready. And Grace, please don't die. The paperwork would be astronomical." Grace smiled despite her racing heart. As she crossed into the forbidden zone, the air itself seemed to thicken with ancient malice. The dragon's eyes, vast pools of molten gold, fixed upon her. Valdrath had been watching her approach since she'd crested the horizon. Nothing surprised a creature that had been conscious for millennia. What did surprise him was that she kept walking. "You are either remarkably brave or catastrophically foolish, little mammal." Valdrath's voice resonated not in her ears but in her mind, each word carrying the weight of ages. "Which is it?" Grace stopped 50 meters from the chains, closer than any being had come in recorded history. She could see them clearly now, not metal or crystal as report suggested, but something that hurt to perceive, as if they existed in more dimensions than her eyes could process. "Probably both," she admitted. "I'm human. It's kind of our thing." The dragon's laugh was like thunder rolling across dead plains. "Human. Yes, I have heard whispers of your kind. The newcomers who ask why not, when the galaxy says impossible. The ones who befriend predators and dive into stars for curiosity's sake. You're well informed, for someone who's been chained here for 1,000 years. Time moves differently when you're immortal, child, and the solar winds carry many stories." Valdrath shifted and the chains sang with tension. "Why have you come? To gawk at the monster? To prove your courage? To take samples for your laboratories?" Grace removed her helmet, ignoring Ezra's immediate protests. The air was breathable, if barely. "I came because you're here. Because every species treats this place like a grave they're afraid to disturb. Because—" She paused, studying the chains more carefully. "Because I think you've been asking for help, and no one's been listening." The dragon's eyes widened, a gesture that would have been imperceptible from a distance but was unmistakable up close. "Perceptive. The energy pulses aren't random," Grace finished. "I analyzed them from orbit. They follow a pattern, repetitive, desperate, a message in a bottle cast across the void." For the first time in centuries, Valdrath felt something like hope, and yet you are the first to recognize it. The Krell, who pride themselves on their logic. The Vex with their collective consciousness. The ancient Talamari, who claim to hear the music of the spheres. None of them saw. "Maybe they didn't want to," Grace said softly. She approached the nearest chain, extending her hand. "Or maybe they couldn't imagine that something so powerful could need help." "Do not touch," Valdrath began, but Grace's fingers were already brushing the surface. The chain screamed. Reality fractured around the point of contact. Grace saw 1,000 years of imprisonment in a heartbeat, a war that shattered worlds, a betrayal by those Valdrath had protected, a sentence carried out by beings who had since passed into legend. She saw the dragon's crime, refusing to destroy a colony of refugees because it violated his code of honor. She also saw the chain's weakness. "Ezra," she gasped, pulling her hand back. "I need you to redirect the Wanderer's main deflector array. Coordinates I'm sending now. Maximum intensity, right? Grace, that's pointed at you. I know, trust me. The dragon watched this exchange with something approaching awe. You would risk yourself. For a creature you met moments ago? A being that could incinerate your entire ship with a thought, were I free? Grace looked up at Valdrath, her eyes fierce. You were imprisoned for showing mercy. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Besides, she grinned, humanity's really good at breaking things we don't think should exist. The beam struck 30 seconds later, a lance of pure energy channeled through Grace's equipment. She'd calculated the resonance frequency perfectly. The chains vibrated, wavered, and shattered into particles of light that dispersed like morning fog. Valdrath stretched wings that hadn't moved in a millennium. They blotted out both suns. Grace stood her ground. The dragon lowered his massive head until one eye was level with the small human who had done the impossible. I could rule this sector now, little mammal. Burn worlds. Take vengeance. You could, Grace agreed, but you won't. How can you be certain? Because you spent 1,000 years sending out a call for help instead of cursing the universe. Because some chains aren't made of energy, they're made of who we choose to be. Valdrath's laugh was different now, warm, genuine. What is your name, bold human? Grace. Fitting. And your companion in the sky? Ezra. He's probably having a heart attack right now. Tell Ezra that Valdrath the Unchained owes humanity a debt. And tell your people this. The galaxy thought itself wise to fear approaching me. But wisdom without compassion is just cowardice wearing a crown. The dragon spread his wings wider. I go now to find what remains of my kind, if any survive. But I will remember the species brave enough or foolish enough to touch the chains. As Valdrath took flight, his form becoming a crimson star ascending into the void, Grace finally responded to Ezra's frantic calls. Grace, are you alive? What happened? I just freed a dragon, Ezra. And I think humanity just made a very powerful friend. Or a very powerful enemy. Grace watched Valdrath disappear among the stars. No, I don't think so. Not him, she was right. In the years that followed, when humanity faced its darkest hour against the Void Swarm, it was Valdrath who arrived with fire and fury, repaying a debt to the species that dared to touch chains no one else would even approach, because that was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not fearlessness, but the courage to act when fear would have others stand frozen, and sometimes that made all the difference.